From brutal offshore drilling platforms all the way to the homeowner and hobbyist, Lincoln Electric's 125 years of experience provides the quality you need. The Newfoundland Hobbyist is sponsored by Lincoln Electric. Whether your project vehicle is brand new or 50 years old, Napa will have the parts and tools you need to get the job done. The Newfoundland Hobbyist is sponsored by Napa Auto Parts. No hesitation. Hey, I'm Kyle, and you're watching the Newfoundland Hobbyist. Welcome to my workshop here, where today we're going to be spending our time. We're going to be building something that I've never made before. This is going to be a new challenge for me, but it's going to pull together a lot of our skills, a lot of the different hobbies and skills that I've been learning over the last several years. You guys probably know that I love my hand tools, and I love pretty much making and engineering anything by hand. But when I started building stuff, hand tools were what I mostly used. And so I started building a vintage tool collection where I collected all sorts of unique hand planes, beautiful hand planes of different sizes, and hand saws. And one of those things that I really love to collect were chisels. And I have a whole assortment here of different styles of vintage chisels. Now right here we have a small assortment, some of the ones that I've narrowed down to over the years. These were the first two I collected that I restored. I made a handle for one of them. I turned out on a lathe. And then the other, this was the handle that came with it. Got a little leather ring there, absorption ring. But two beautiful little chisels, not matching, not the same brand, but two different sizes that I found in an old antique store. And I really like them. They've got quite a bit of use. A couple other socket chisels here, bigger ones. These are closer to framing chisels. This is a nice size chisel here, a full 1 inch. Beautiful socket chisel, original handle. Really love it. Another chisel here, different size. Just beautiful. These two are Witherby's, which is a beautiful old brand name, very cherished, highly regarded. And look at this chisel right here. This is one, I tell you, I had just the best day when I came across this one. This one is actually matching with this one. I bought these two here, Canadian Champion brand. I found them, a guy down the Carbonear area here in Newfoundland. But these were a pair. Aren't they beautiful? Look at the size of that chisel. We did a lot of work with this one when I did the timber frame workbench in the very first season of the Newfoundland Hobbyist. Here's where a big chisel like this comes in handy. It's so wide. I can remove material easily because I can really get the weight of my body behind the chisel. But it's also really good at leveling because it's so wide it acts closer to a plane. Got a big reference surface on the back. I know this is just, to a lot of you, it's just a workbench and it doesn't need to be that clean or perfect, but I take pride in what I do, and I want to know when it's finished that I can truly say it's to the best of my ability. I also have a standard 4-piece set, these Fuller chisels. I believe the Fuller brand is Canadian made. These take a little bit there, and an expensive chisel. They take a little bit of tuning to get right out of box, get them polished and tuned up, but I really like them. It's a very flat carpenter style chisel, and use them for a lot of different projects, especially when the project offers a little bit of risk. I'd rather these cheaper chisels take the brunt of it than some of my finer vintage chisels. But something I've been wanting to do is to build a 4-pair set of chisels on my own using a pattern that I dreamed up years ago. Something that I think will work. It's not 100% certain, but I think it will work for us. When I make knives out of bar stock material, and I give them a micarta handle, they end up being really, really tough. And I got to thinking, why couldn't you make a set of fine woodworking or hobby chisels with that material? Do a full tang style with laminated scales, so you have that exposed tang on the back. And most materials you get, especially micarta and fiberglass materials today, are more than tough enough to withstand the brunt. With some pins through to absorb the impact, I believe you were able to make a set of custom chisels exactly to our specs with materials I use for knife making. So that's exactly what we're going to try to do today. Let's open up a fresh bar of steel. This is 3/16 01 tool steel, the same steel I use on a lot of my knives. It comes coated in a grease to protect it in shipping, so we'll have to wipe that off so we can do some accurate drawing. I think today, with the precision we need on this project, we'll add some blue Dykem to the mix. Some layout marking fluid. Blue Dykem layout fluid, when it dries, gives a chalky matte texture, which allows you to write with things like pencils or lead pencils or whatever things you want. You can write on it because it's a dry textured surface. I've got some measurements in mind. Now I'll start doing my layout process. I want these chisels to be kind of short, stubby, closer to like a fine carving chisel, a craft chisel. Now with some measurements and drawings drawn onto our steel stock, we can start cutting our bar stock down into individual bite-sized pieces, we'll say. From there we can cut and grind into our final shapes. There we are, 4 chisels marked out. Look how that blue Dykem, you can see the matte finish and you can so sharply see our drawings there. So here's our 1 inch, so we'll take the full width of the material, neck down slightly, tapered in slightly here. A fairly simple design, one that gives us lots of material here to hold on to. But to make a nice little push chisel, without needing a mallet, this is a lovely size, the perfect size in my opinion. The widest, the 1 inch chisel, and the smallest, the 1/4 inch chisel. Whenever you're making something that needs to be precise ground like this, never take it to dimension on the first step. Always cut outside your line, leave a bit of bulk, so with each step you can refine and work down to that. If you take it to dimension, with the first step we cut it down, now we have no material left. When we start grinding that smooth edge, we have nowhere to go, so we end up with something that is undersized. We don't want to do that. Now we're going to take it into the grinding room here. We're going to rough this to shape. Whether I'm in the workshop or out on the trails, Wild Med Kits provides me with the equipment I need to stay prepared. The Newfoundland Hobbyist is sponsored by wildmedkits.ca. As a custom knife maker and craftsman, sharpening has become a part of my daily routine. I use paulsfinest.com for all of my sharpening equipment. The Newfoundland Hobbyist is sponsored by Paul's Finest.
Fairly good.
I have had a belt grinder of some sort and dimension ever since I started hobby or craft work. Originally starting with a 1x30 and now finally up to this 2x72, which is just an incredible addition to my workshop. Shape ground. Not totally convinced on this handle shape yet. We may alter that later. Can't decide. I mean, for all function purposes, it's right what I want. Gives me lots of handle pinch in right here to work the chisel by hand in a carving type manner. But I'm not sold on the aesthetics, so we'll see. Right now we need to grind some bevels on each side. We're going to do a bevel edge chisel. And this part, very similar to knife making. It's a new day, and I was really happy with the progress we made yesterday. These chisels, those side bevels we got done, got those necks shaped in, just really happy with what's happening so far. But I got to thinking last night, and I kind of want to change direction a little bit with this project. I was planning to make a really nice utilitarian set of chisels, take them like this right now, put handles on them, sharpen them after heat treat and everything, of course, and have it done with. But I started thinking last night, if we're taking, this steel is fairly expensive, and if we're taking the time to make a beautiful set of fine carving chisels for ourselves, then why not go all out and make them elaborate, beautiful, special? So that's what we're going to do. I started by thinking, why don't we add a little bit of brass? And I got on to thinking more about the handle and the pins I want to do there. And then I even thought about what could we do with the flats here. So we're going to do some work right now to spice these things up. We're going for functional as well as beautiful. Something like myself, I figure. But let's just start sketching. The first thing I want to do is on the back, the flats of these chisels. I want to do some engraving, some really nice custom engraving. So let's just draw a few sketches here, see if we can come up with something we like. A little bit of fresh Dykem here now. Now, rarely do I do something that is all frills, all for the purpose of aesthetics, but sometimes you just have to push your level of finesse, your creativity here, and add in some stuff that is just for the sole purpose of looks. We have a diamond bit here, and I'm gonna see if I can carve out what I have drawn here. Simmons Tire supplies all the wheels, tires, and accessories you need for everything from ATVs and cars to heavy equipment and machinery. The Newfoundland Hobbyist is sponsored by Simmons Tire. For the beginner and advanced sharpener, the Edge Pro sharpening system makes it easier for you to get razor sharp edges every time. The Newfoundland Hobbyist is sponsored by Edge Pro Inc. A bandsaw, more particularly a metal cutting bandsaw, has been an incredible addition to my shop. I invested in one early in my knife making career, and it's been so wonderful to have. I just recently converted this one into being permanently mounted. These machines were made to be held in hand and used to be able to carry around, cut steel stock and different things to dimension, like you're seeing here with this battery powered DeWalt model that I have. Since I do have this lovely battery-powered model now, which is more suitable for portability, I converted my plug-in model to a permanently mounted station. This is now a much nicer setup for those quick cuts and everyday cuts around the shop compared to having to just clamp it by the handle in my woodworking vise. exactly what I had in mind. Clean and simple. I just hope it gives me a solid enough feel. That's our flux core weld there we did on that plate. Pleased with that. We couldn't get it on the inside, but that's more than strong enough. This is 1/4 inch angle. Okay, needs to be able to go in here. This would be very easily removed as well. I'll be able to leave this on the wall and slip the machine right out of this, I'll bet. Oh, that looks great. The fit from the wall. Very solid up and down. I can still get at the controls on the back if I need to. The only thing that's not really suitable is just like I expected. Because it's out there, it does have a bit more side to side than I want. So I'm gonna have to put in a plate extending maybe a piece of bar stock or something out here to another wall mount. And that will give this bar some extra rigidity. A bracket that looks something like that. What do you think? Oh yeah, just put that tack. Look at that. Move the buffer out of here, so we got lots of room now to get in here. Also gives us a lot more room at the metal drill press here. And here's what we have here. Of course, our plate with our arm coming out, and then a supporting bracket. But it's quite solid, as you can see. There is the plate that we mounted onto is an adjustable plate. It's a dovetail type or like a clasp type system like this with a bar going through it. So there is a little bit of slop in that, but you won't be bothering with that. Because this is the table, and this is the blade, and you're not going to get the blade to move enough to move the saw. So it's there. Very solid, a lot more solid even than it was clamped in the vise here. And it's always set up, which is really, really nice. Just really thrilled with that. Didn't cost us a dime, just scrap plate we had around. And then I bought that foot pedal, which is cheap. So I can just walk right over now for those quick little jobs. No more grabbing, pulling out the tool and getting it up here and having it in the way and stuff like that. It has its own spot where it's gonna live. So along with a messy workshop, we have 4 chisels that are going to be fine chisels, I believe. Right now we have our side bevels ground. We have our perimeters all finished ground to shape. We have our holes drilled for all our handle components. We have 4 pairs of brass collars here to add. And then we'll be picking our scales after, and that is all the time we have for today. And so I hope you thoroughly enjoyed another episode of the Newfoundland Hobbyist. I really appreciate having you here. If you want to follow the remainder of this project, make sure you tune in next week as we're going to be continuing with the heat treat, the sharpening, leather work. We've got a lot of really exciting content coming up, so I hope you come back. Thanks so much to my sponsors. If you guys can support them in any way, I'd really appreciate it, as I appreciate them helping me out and making this show possible. As always, thanks for watching. Make sure you tune in next week to the Newfoundland Hobbyist.